What's going on, guys? So as I continue to create the remaining characters for my game, I'm still constantly trying to find ways to improve my 3D modeling quality and efficiency. When I first started learning 3D modeling, my first character took me well over 200 hours. However, through learning and practice of keyboard shortcuts, object modifiers, and special tools, I was able to model and fully texture paint my latest character in just 10 hours. While there are many techniques I've learned over this time, there are 10 I believe have had the most significant positive impact on my progress. So starting out at number 10, we have duplicate and join objects. I've been using this method much more recently as I work to improve my character modeling workflow efficiency. Rather than making all character parts and clothing from scratch 25 plus times over, I have the ability to duplicate parts from other characters. Examples include duplicating hands, arms, feet, and even certain clothing from other characters. I then bring those into my active character file before joining all parts together into one main character object. The only issue here is the parts are no longer connected to the character mesh. However, this is where the next tool on my top 10 list comes in handy. Number 9, we have bridge edge loops. This is a tool I've used most often when connecting separate parts of the character together. Rather than doing everything at once, I find it easier to focus on the head, then the torso to get proportions correct. Then focus on modeling the arms, hands, legs, feet separately before using bridge edge loops to connect everything together as one object. This ensures clean topology, as each part must have the same amount of edges before they can be connected cleanly. Rather than redoing everything from scratch, I'm able to duplicate parts of other characters, connect them, and make final tweaks to fit the new character's proportions. Sometimes adjusting proportions does mess up the evenly spaced vertices and edges, so I really love using number 8, smooth vertices, to clean up uneven surfaces instantly. This is especially true when I'm constantly moving vertices to try and match my 2D character reference sheet. Rather than manually trying to clean up the spacing, I often use smooth vertices a few times and it cleans everything instantly. This works especially well for surfaces that normally should be smooth, such as characters' cheeks and overall head shape. Even clothing and hair when adjusted can lose the overall smoothness, so smoothing vertices gets the overall mesh back to a workable state. Sometimes scaling and manually moving vertices is not the best method for achieving volume or even thickness, so a few years back I was excited to learn about number 7, the shrink/fatten tool. Unlike the solidify modifier, which only works on separate objects, the shrink/fatten tool thickens mesh evenly along a surface's normals. This works very well for much of the clothing for the style of game I'm trying to achieve, such as overly thick pants, shirts, and accessories. Cozy characters tend to rely on soft, round, exaggerated features rather than realism, so using this tool really helps to create this style. Once the mesh reaches the overall proportional thickness I'm trying to achieve, there are times I still want to alter a specific area to maybe add wrinkles or an extra pocket. Rather than deleting the mesh or creating it all from scratch again, there's another useful tool to solve this issue. Number 6, loop cuts. Using the loop cut tool, I can add extra geometry to certain areas of the object where more detail may be needed. I can still duplicate and reuse a base mesh for shirts, pants, shoes, etc., but add and slide key loop cuts to fit the character's theme is very helpful. For example, I recently reused my sneaker model I made on my first character, altered the loops, and then texture painted it to transform those sneakers into work boots. It's important to know where the loop cuts need to be placed, and so this brings me to number 5, X-ray mode. Being able to see through the mesh is critical when trying to ensure your model matches the reference proportions from the X, Y, and Z axis. I constantly use this along with the annotate tool to trace the reference proportions and feature positions, which would be impossible without having a transparent mesh. In addition, this allows the ability to use the box tool to select the front and back of the portion of a mesh in case I need to delete it or adjust that part without affecting the other parts of the mesh. However, sometimes objects such as clothing and hair can still obscure visibility in X-ray mode. Luckily, Blender offers my 4th biggest time saver, hiding objects. Though simple, by using collections I can organize 10 to 15 objects in one scene and only show which ones I want without cluttering my viewport. In addition, I've had issues in the past where I thought I was editing one object but had the wrong one or multiple objects selected. This resulted in unfortunate changes, and I hadn't realized those until after I saved the file. Hiding objects also allows me to focus on working with one mesh at a time, without, let's say, the hair or clothing getting in the way of me making changes to the character, or vice versa. One of the tools that has been the culprit of this happens to be my double-edged sword. Number 3, the proportional editing tool. In the early years of using it, I would often forget I had connected only unchecked, which made changes to neighboring mesh and objects, even if that wasn't what I had selected. However, now knowing to hide objects and keep that checked only when needed allows me to manipulate large areas of mesh without needing to use sculpting. In my first few years, I didn't know this existed and was literally moving only a few vertices at a time. Looking back, I could have saved hundreds of hours if I learned how to use this tool earlier. I'm now able to use proportional editing quickly to move large areas of the face of each character to the active reference image, while still keeping the base topology intact. In addition, I could hide certain areas of the mesh so they won't be affected by this tool, and combining this with Select Link, number 2, has sped up my workflow tremendously. Simply hovering and pressing L in Blender will automatically select the hovered vertice, as well as all vertices that are connected to it. I found this very helpful in the modeling process, and even more so when selecting only certain parts of a mesh I want to texture paint without getting paint on other nearby areas of the same mesh. This has been equally beneficial when selecting and unwrapping mesh in organized islands before beginning the painting process too. Over the course of 8 years, these tools and shortcuts have saved me thousands of hours. However, the one modifier that has saved me the most time by far is number 1, the mirror modifier. Probably the most used modifier in every 3D modeler's workflow, the mirror modifier does exactly as it reads, automatically creating a mirrored version of your model on the other side. Not only does it cut my workflow time in half, I'm able to make changes and the mirror modifier will always reflect those changes in real time. Even better, I'm still able to export the model as an FBX into Unity, but could always go back to the original file without ever having to actually apply the modifier. At this point in time, I'm continuing to create the remaining characters for my game, using all of the time-saving tools, shortcuts, and modifiers listed previously. There will still be occasions where I'm not too great at creating certain unique clothing or hairstyles, but it's exciting to be at a level where everything is now possible to finish in a realistic time frame. If all goes well, I'm looking at only about 200 hours to finish the remaining characters for my game. Funny enough, in about the same 200 hours it took me to make one character in 2018, I can now make 20 unique stylized characters in the same period of time. Some characters I will not show on the channel, as I want them to be a surprise for those who play the game. However, in next month's devlog, I will show any newly created characters that will not result in any spoilers. As always, thanks for watching and stay tuned for August's devlog. More characters to come.